What exercises should you do to get stronger at the arm wrestling table? This is a question I've been asked all the time since I started this YouTube journey. So in this video, I'm going to answer this question by showing you different exercises that you can do for every arm wrestling technique. Let's get straight into it, and the first and most important step is to know your technique. If you are a beginner, do what feels most natural for you and try not to copy already established arm wrestlers. Equally important is to stick to that one technique that feels most natural to you. I see this all the time where new arm wrestlers change their technique after every loss. They go from hook to top roll to press every 2 months. The technique in itself is seldom the problem. The problem is that you are not strong and technical enough. Of course, being versatile is extremely important, but you'll only achieve this with experience and time in the sport. At the beginning, and with that I mean the first few years, focus on one technique and master it. After identifying your technique, you should also identify what variation of that technique you are using. And for that, I made this great pyramid with all the main arm wrestling techniques. Identify exactly what you do on the table, because this will be extremely important later on when choosing the right exercises. After you have these 2 steps figured out, you can start with the exercise selection. I will structure this as follows. For each technique, I'll give you the areas that you'll have to strengthen, a few example exercises that you can do, and I will also show you some elite arm wrestlers that have mastered that technique. I will add chapters in the description so you can jump straight to your technique. So let's start on the bottom left side with flop press. I think the 2 biggest names that everyone think about when they hear flop press are Kamil Jablonski and Jerry Cadoret. Kamil is relatively new to the top of the sport, while Jerry has been there for a few decades. To be a strong flop presser, you will need a strong arm. More precisely, you will need a strong bicep, center winning capability, which means side pressure, to be able to win the center, and a strong pronator. You will need a strong pronator so that nobody can turn it while you are flop pressing, which is also how you beat a flop presser. You grab him low and take his pronator. You can do easy bar bicep curls to strengthen your bicep, or one arm bicep curls with a dumbbell. You can train side pressure pec to pec with whatever handle and grip you want, but probably the pronated side pressure will benefit you the most. And for pronation, you can do pronation work through the forearm. Grab the belt like shown in the video to target your pronation correctly. Continuing with the shoulder press. The shoulder press is very similar to the flop press, but here you will keep your wrist. The strongest pressers at the moment are Ibrahim Sagov, who was the 115 kg East vs West champ, and Rino Masic, who is currently injured on his right arm. For the shoulder press, you will need the same strength as for the flop press. You will need a strong bicep to have a very tight angle, a strong center winning capability, which means side pressure, to be able to come into the press, and you'll also need a strong wrist. You'll need a strong wrist because you'll initiate the press through your wrist. For the biceps and side pressure, you can do the same exercises mentioned a moment ago. Easy bar bicep curls, one arm bicep curls, and side pressure peg to peg. For the wrist, you can do dumbbell wrist curls in a 45-degree angle. Let's move on to the first hook variation, which is the side pressure hook. As the name implies, you will use a lot of side pressure. Back in the day, Todd Hutchings used to do this hook variation all the time. Recently, he switched to a more pronated based side pressure because he realized that you are much more effective when your pronator is active, regardless of your style. Another example would be Paul Lin, who also uses the offensive side pressure hook. Obviously, the most important strength for this hook variation is your side pressure. You can train your side pressure with many different grips and handles, but I would recommend making the pronated side pressure to your main lift. It is much more effective to apply your side pressure through your pronator. Also, having a strong wrist will help you be even more efficient. For the wrist, you can do wrist curls in a 45-degree angle or eccentric handle work for the fingers. The next hook variation is the dragging hook. The dragging hook is one of the most popular arm wrestling techniques. You'll basically shoot your hook, but instead of going right to the side, you will pin your opponent by pulling towards yourself with your back. Alijan Muratov does this technique extremely well, And because he's also extremely fast, he makes this hook variation look even more impressive. Another top athlete that uses this variation is Sasha Andreev. But because he's not that fast, when he does it, you can really see what muscles and vectors he's using the most. As a dragging hooker, your back must be extremely strong, because that's the main muscle that does the pulling movement. A really great exercise that you can do is dumbbell back rows. You will work your back, brachioradialis, wrist and fingers all at the same time. You can also use a fat grip to target your wrist and fingers even more. Your wrist must also be extremely strong to be able to handle the strength of your own back. Otherwise, you will lose your hand. For the wrist, you can do back rows at the machine with a handle that will attack your wrist and fingers. You can use a rolling thunder, or if you want to make it even harder, use the wrist wrench. Now comes a technique that combines elements of the hook and the top roll, and that is the high hook. The high hook is seen by many as the most effective arm wrestling technique, and that for a good reason. When you use the high hook, you will cup high with your index and middle finger. You will also have your riser and pronation active. When you do all these things together in a coordinated way, it is very hard for the opponent to do something against it. The most known high hooker is Devon Larratt, who also made this move extremely popular. Also, the greatest of all time, John Borzeng, used to do this technique quite often in his days. The most important aspect, if you want to do the high hook, is to be well coordinated on the table. And you will only achieve this by practicing the move thousands of times. If you want to train it in the gym as well, you will have to focus a lot on high cupping, which you can train with the multi-spinner. High pronation, here you can do high pronation work at the pulley and on the riser, which you can strengthen by doing rising work on the table. Let's move on to the first top roll variation, which is the posting top roll. The main weapons of the posting top roll are a strong riser and a strong back pressure. Levan Saginashvili, who is currently the strongest arm wrestler on the planet, uses this top roll variation. When you do this effectively, it is extremely difficult for the opponent to do something against it. They will either lose their wrist or they will lift their elbow up when the pressure gets too high. Another elite arm wrestler that uses this technique as his main weapon is Hermes Gasparini. Hermes has the best technique combination you can have, a strong posting top roll together with a very strong press. That means he can take the opponent's hand, and if the side pressure is not enough, he can jump into a press. To build a strong posting top roll in the gym, you will have to focus a lot on your rising and back pressure. For the rising, you can do the classic rising lift on the table. Just grab the belt normally and make sure it goes exactly over your knuckles. And for the back pressure, you can do pronated back pressure on the table. This also teaches you to apply your back pressure together with some pronation. The next technique is one of the hardest to master, but also probably the most effective one of all, and that is the side pressure top roll. Side pressure top roll is hitting your opponent sideways through pronation while you control his pronator with your wrist and fingers. The best arm wrestler to master this technique is Engin Terzi. It takes a lot of time to master this top roll variation, because you need a lot of coordination to be able to do it properly. Another very good arm wrestler who used this technique in the second part of his career is Arsen Liliev. Even though not as effective as Engin, Arsen also used to attack sideways through the pronator. To do this variation effectively, you will need a very strong pronator and wrist. For the pronation, you can do low pronation work at the pulley. This variation is great because it teaches you to pronate with your forearm. You will also need to do some high pronation work. Grab the belt high and do your regular pronation work. For the wrist, you can do some dumbbell wrist curls at the 45-degree angle and some finger work with the eccentric handle. Now, let's take a look at the low hand top roll. The low hand top roll is exactly the technique you will need to counter a hooker, because you will be able to neutralize their wrist. And because of that, there are many great arm wrestlers who have mastered this technique. One of them being Yanis Amolic. Yanis has been in the game for a very long time, and he's been using this technique very effectively over the years. Another arm wrestler who uses this technique on a regular basis is Mindaugas Tarasaitis. will have the title shot against Artur Makarov at the next East vs West event. I wouldn't be surprised if Mindaugas will use the low hand top roll in their match. To be strong in this top roll variation, you will need a strong back pressure together with a strong pronator. For the back pressure, you can do pronated back pressure on the table. Grab the belt over your thumb. By doing that, you will learn to apply your back pressure with pronation through the lower part of your wrist. Or you can do the classic pull-ups. Use a neutral grip to simulate a real arm wrestling match. For the pronation, you can do pronation through the forearm, because this is how you will use your pronation on the table. And the last technique on the list is the open arm top roll, or the king's move, however you want to call it. The open arm top roll is very effective, and everyone who has pulled against someone with this technique knows how hard it is to beat that person. But it really takes a long time to master the open arm top roll. And if you take a good look, everyone who has mastered it has already been arm wrestling for decades. Of course, the biggest names that use this technique are Devon Larratt and Michael Todd. Both of them have been in the sport of arm wrestling for more than 3 decades. So, if you want to develop a strong open arm top roll, you will have to spend a lot of time on the table to get the elbow flexors really tight. You will also need a lot of pronation combined with rising. For pronation, you can do high pronation at the pulley system. And for the riser, you can do the exact same exercise, but make sure the belt goes down directly over your knuckles. These were all the main arm wrestling techniques and some exercises that you can do to get stronger in the sport of arm wrestling. These were just some examples. If you have better exercises, just do them. Whatever makes you strong is what you should do. If you have any questions, write them down in the comment section below. I will answer them all. Also, if my videos are helping your arm wrestling game grow, consider supporting the channel. Link is down below. Keep your eyes on this channel, great stuff is coming.